History says she seduced two of the most powerful men on earth. History says her beauty brought an empire to its knees. History says she was a temptress, a manipulator, a scandal. But empires do not fear beauty. They fear intelligence. They fear influence. They fear leaders who understand power. So why did Rome work so hard to destroy her reputation? Why did Octavian, the future Emperor Augustus, turn her into a villain? Because if Cleopatra was merely a seductress, Rome had nothing to fear. But if she was something far more dangerous, strategic, educated, politically brilliant, then the story changes. In 69 BCE, Cleopatra VII Philopator was born into a collapsing dynasty. She would become the last active ruler of Ptolemaic Egypt and the most misunderstood woman in ancient history. Cleopatra was not Egyptian by blood. Her family was Macedonian Greek, descended from Ptolemy, one of Alexander the Great's generals. For nearly 3 centuries, her dynasty ruled Egypt from Alexandria. But by the time Cleopatra was born, the court was decaying. Incestuous marriages preserved power. Assassinations removed rivals. Sibling alliances shifted overnight. Trust was dangerous. Cleopatra grew up watching power slip through careless hands. Unlike many of her predecessors, she adapted. She learned the Egyptian language. She studied philosophy, astronomy, medicine, mathematics, and rhetoric. She immersed herself in culture and religion. She presented herself not only as queen, but as the reincarnation of Isis. When her father, Ptolemy XII, died, she was 18. Tradition forced her into co-rule with her 10-year-old brother Ptolemy XIII, who was also her husband. But Cleopatra did not intend to remain symbolic. Within 3 years, she was overthrown, exiled, driven from her own kingdom. Yet exile did not weaken her, it sharpened her. Rome was tearing itself apart. Julius Caesar defeated Pompey in civil war. Pompey fled to Egypt. He was murdered before he could even speak to Cleopatra. His head was delivered to Caesar as proof of loyalty. Instead, it enraged him. Caesar entered Alexandria with tension rising. Cleopatra saw opportunity where others saw chaos. Legend says she had herself smuggled into Caesar's chambers wrapped in a carpet. Whether literal or symbolic, the act was calculated. It was theater, a message. She was bold enough to risk everything. She did not plead, she negotiated. She convinced Caesar that restoring her throne served Rome. War erupted in Alexandria. The palace complex burned. Fighting raged through the streets. But Cleopatra prevailed. Restored as queen, she bore Caesar a son, Caesarion. For a moment, Egypt was central to Rome's future. Then, in 44 BCE, Caesar was assassinated. Cleopatra returned to Egypt, careful, patient, watching Rome fracture again. Power in Rome consolidated into 3 men: Octavian, Lepidus, and Mark Antony. Antony summoned Cleopatra to meet him in Tarsus. She did not arrive quietly. She staged an entrance designed for history. A golden barge, purple sails billowing in the wind, silver oars flashing in the sun, perfume drifting across the river. She appeared dressed as Isis, divine, radiant, unforgettable. This was not seduction, it was strategy. Antony needed Egypt's wealth. Cleopatra needed Rome's military protection. Their alliance became romantic. They had children. They forged political unity. But Rome grew uneasy. When Antony granted eastern territories to Cleopatra and her children during the donations of Alexandria, Octavian seized his chance. He declared war, not on Antony, but on Cleopatra. And the myth machine began. After defeat at Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, the end approached quickly. Antony, believing Cleopatra dead, fell upon his sword. He was carried to her mausoleum. He died in her arms. Octavian entered Alexandria victorious. Cleopatra was captured. He planned to parade her through Rome in chains, a symbol of conquest. She refused to become spectacle. In 30 BCE, Cleopatra took her own life, and myth took control. Here are 10 legends that shaped her immortality. 1. Cleopatra was the most beautiful woman in the world. Ancient sources obsess over her charm, yet surviving coins show a strong profile, prominent nose, and determined expression. Plutarch wrote that her beauty alone was not unparalleled, but her presence was irresistible. Her voice was described as musical, her conversation intoxicating, her intellect magnetic. It was not physical perfection that moved empires. It was personality sharpened by intelligence. 2. She bathed daily in donkey milk. The story paints absurd luxury, hundreds of donkeys milked for her skin. Milk baths were known in antiquity. But Roman writers exaggerated excess to portray her as decadent and indulgent. Decadence justified conquest. If she symbolized corruption, Rome symbolized order. 3. She used dark magic to control men. Octavian's propaganda called her a sorceress, an Eastern witch who bewitched Roman generals. There is no credible evidence of mystical manipulation. What she mastered was perception. When she dressed as Isis, she invoked divine legitimacy. When she staged grand entrances, she controlled narrative. Magic was a metaphor for influence. 4. She experimented with poisons on prisoners. Some ancient writers claim she tested toxins to determine painless death. Knowledge of poison was common in royal courts. But cruelty stories made her easier to demonize. A feared woman becomes easier to conquer. 5. She betrayed Egypt by aligning with Rome. Egypt was already economically dependent on Rome. Her alliances with Caesar and Antony delayed annexation. She leveraged Roman power to preserve sovereignty. She did not surrender Egypt. She negotiated its survival. 6. She manipulated Mark Antony into ruin. The romantic narrative suggests Antony lost reason under her spell, but Antony was a seasoned commander. He made strategic decisions. He miscalculated Octavian. Blaming Cleopatra protected Roman masculinity. 7. She was Egyptian by blood. She was Macedonian Greek. Yet she embraced Egyptian language and religion more fully than many predecessors. She presented herself as Pharaoh, as daughter of Ra, as Isis incarnate. Identity was political, and she understood symbolism. 8. She sought to conquer Rome. Octavian accused her of planning to rule the empire. There is no evidence she intended to invade Italy. Her ambitions focused on securing eastern territories. The threat was inflated for political support. 9. She died dramatically from a snake, an asp hidden in figs. The image is unforgettable. A cobra concealed in fruit, a queen embracing divine death. Snakes are unpredictable. Poison administered through ointment or hidden instrument is more plausible. The snake may have been chosen for symbolism. The cobra represented royal authority. Even in death, narrative mattered. 10. Her story was written by her conqueror. Octavian became Augustus, the first Roman emperor. He required legitimacy. He required a villain. Cleopatra became the embodiment of foreign corruption. History was not neutral. It was curated by power. And here, one additional myth. Cleopatra had countless lovers and uncontrollable desires. Roman poets whispered that she never slept alone, that her appetite was as vast as the Nile, that Roman virtue collapsed in her presence. But the historical record is remarkably thin. Beyond Caesar and Antony, there is no credible evidence of a string of lovers. The myth served a purpose. If Rome could portray her as ruled by desire, it did not have to admit she ruled through intellect. With her death, Egypt became a Roman province. Octavian became Augustus. The Roman Empire began. Cleopatra became a cautionary tale. Roman historians painted her as dangerous, over-sexualized, corrupting. Later centuries reshaped her image again and again. But remove propaganda, remove fantasy, and what remains? A multilingual scholar, a strategist, a financial reformer, a ruler navigating collapse. She inherited decline. She fought it with intelligence, with theater, with alliances, with narrative control. Cleopatra understood something timeless. Power is perception. control the story, or become the story someone else tells. Octavian won the war, but Cleopatra won immortality. More than 2,000 years later, we still speak her name. Not because she was beautiful, not because she loved powerful men, but because she understood power itself. The myth endures, the rumors echo, but the truth is far more compelling. Cleopatra was not merely the last queen of Egypt, she was one of history's first masters of political image, and perhaps the most misunderstood woman in ancient history.